It's Friday, September 26, 2025, and I'm tracking two tropical systems that may pose a threat to parts of the East Coast. We have Hurricane Humberto that is to the south of Bermuda and quickly strengthening and most likely will become a Category 4 hurricane as we head into early next week. And there's also an invest that's to the west of Humberto that's near Cuba that looks to strengthen into a tropical system itself. And both storms have potential impacts for the East Coast, which we will discuss in this video. And as you can see with the spaghetti plot forecast here, Humberto looks to head up towards the East Coast, but most likely will trend out to sea, where the other system will actually be pushed by Humberto towards the East Coast. And this is a unique situation where you have two tropical systems next to each other that will actually interact, but it looks like we'll see one system push the other one towards the coast. And speaking of the next system forming, it will be Imelda, which will be next on the list. So that will be the storm that potentially impacts parts of the East Coast and most likely the Carolinas. So that's what we'll be watching over the next few days. And then potentially more storms to form, but the hurricane season is running out of time now. So we'll see how many storms we actually get to on this list over the next several weeks. And this is the storm setup that I've drawn on the map here, as we will most likely have two tropical systems working their way towards the East Coast. Of course, what most likely will be Imelda will be the storm that we keep a very close eye on as it gets close to the East Coast. I do think we will see some impacts from that storm. Meanwhile, Humberto most likely will be producing waves for the East Coast, but could potentially impact Bermuda directly. And as you can see, as we get to Tuesday's forecast, this is where Imelda most likely will be, pretty close to the Carolinas, while Humberto continues to strengthen and most likely will be a major hurricane at this point and head closer to Bermuda as one storm heads more off to the west. Humberto will head more northbound and then eventually off to the east. We do have that stationary front, which will most likely block impacts further to the north, but that could also slow down the storm system, at least Imelda, over the Carolinas, producing a lot of heavy rainfall. But having both storms together in the same location, or at least close to each other, is a unique effect that doesn't happen too often. And this unique scenario is called the Fujiwara effect. And basically it's when two tropical systems of about equal strength around the same location do develop and then interact with each other. And in this scenario, three separate things can happen. And one of those scenarios is we can have one storm, most likely Humberto being stronger than the other storm, actually either absorb the storm or push the storm away, while the other two scenarios, when the storms are about equal strength, they can dance around each other or redirect each other's trajectory. But most likely in this scenario, we will see the newly formed storm get pushed away from Humberto, and that could cause impacts for the East Coast. And this is the wind gust forecast over the next several days from the American model. You can see how both storms will move northward, but eventually Imelda getting pushed into parts of the East Coast from a strengthening Humberto, which will most likely be a major Category 3 to 4 hurricane and potentially will later impact parts of Bermuda. At this point, I do think the main impacts from Imelda will be the heavy rain. We're already seeing some heavy rain in this area over the next few days, and then piling on tropical rains on top of that, not looking too great for locations that typically flood in these locations, and even locations that might not typically flood could see some minor localized flooding, as we could see maybe 10 plus inches of rain in this area. I don't think it's the same impacts we've had in the past from some tropical systems, at least right now, but this is something to watch. If it does look like Imelda will strengthen even more, that means more heavy rain is in the forecast and more potential for flooding. So this is the rainfall forecast through next Friday. So the rains won't really arrive until Monday evening and into Tuesday, but we will see tropical rains on top of already saturated ground. And this could create a situation where we see widespread flooding in some locations in South and North Carolina. It looks like right now South Carolina could take the brunt, but there's still some uncertainty. This area of rain could shift to the north or south over the next few days. And zooming in, you can see where some of those locations in South Carolina could see upwards of 10 inches of rain. This is a situation where we could see maybe 10, 15, even 20 inches of rain in localized areas, and that will cause substantial flooding. So that's why I think this is the main concern for the storm right now, but it doesn't rule out other impacts such as storm surge and other risks. We're just uncertain in how strong Imelda will actually be in that department, but certainly the rainfall and the tropical rains are expected in this scenario. In terms of Hurricane Humberto, it is going to strengthen even more, like I mentioned, into a major Category 3 to 4 hurricane, potentially even a Category 5. We have one model that gets that high, but I do think it'll at least make Category 4 strength, which is the National Hurricane Center's forecast, before eventually weakening as it starts to make the turn around Bermuda. So with Humberto strengthening and also Imelda becoming a tropical system, we will see some large waves along the east coast, specifically in South and North Carolina. If Imelda does make landfall, you will see some 15, 20, even 25-foot waves potentially just offshore. And then Humberto will be producing some large waves of its own as it moves up the east coast, and then potentially impacting Bermuda as well. 10-foot plus waves can't be ruled out all the way up to Long Island, but certainly for Bermuda, potentially seeing upwards of 15, even 20-foot waves, but at least the island is well fortified for something like this. And speaking of Bermuda, there will be some stronger wind gusts from most likely Humberto passing very close to the island, maybe upwards of 45 to 55 miles per hour, and can't rule out hurricane force winds, as Humberto will make a close pass by and potentially still could make a direct impact. It all depends on that stationary front to the north. If it does slide even farther southward, that would put the direct impacts of Humberto on the island of Bermuda, so that's something we'll be watching over the next several days. There will also be some rainfall impacts for the island, not substantial right now, but if you put that northeast side of the storm over Bermuda, we could be talking about upwards of 10 inches of rain for the island. So in addition to the heavy rain from the tropical system next week, we also have some heavy rain shower activity today for parts of North and South Carolina, and this threat could even be in the forecast again tomorrow for parts of the area. A level 2 out of 4 risk for excessive rainfall, but the flood risk will certainly go up as we add that tropical rains in the forecast next week. And then out in the southwest, we do have the monsoonal rains back in the forecast for parts of Arizona and New Mexico, and that will also continue in the forecast for tomorrow. So this is tomorrow's forecast, where you can see the southwest, the rain shift a little bit more into New Mexico, but certainly more heavy rain for North and South Carolina on the east coast, which could potentially be a major issue with the tropical rains in the forecast next week. And here's the future radar forecast for parts of the southeast. You can see those showers and storms setting up shop this afternoon, and then producing more rainfall again tomorrow, more so on the coastline, as Imelda starts to develop east of Florida and over the Bahamas. There will certainly be some heavy rain for the Bahamas and parts of Florida, but more substantial risk for parts of South and North Carolina. And you can see that rainfall forecast even encompassing parts of coastal Georgia, but we definitely have that rainfall upwards of 1 inch to 2 inches of rain, maybe even 3 inches for isolated locations in South and North Carolina, and even some heavy rainfall for Florida, but you probably won't see the tropical rains, or at least much tropical rain from Imelda as it passes by. So as we head over to the southwest here, we will see another round of showers and storms from the monsoonal rains coming in, a slow-moving low passing over the area, and we will see potentially a couple of rounds of heavy rain in southeastern Arizona, southwestern New Mexico, and then eastern New Mexico tomorrow. So all those locations could potentially see some isolated flash flooding, so definitely keep emergency alerts enabled on your phone if you do live in these locations. And here's the rainfall forecast for the southwest. Not as much as the east coast, but this is an area that doesn't handle rain too well. So upwards of 1 inch of rain over an hour or two could definitely cause some isolated flash flooding, so definitely be aware of that. So looking ahead, we'll be tracking Humberto over the next few days as it becomes a major hurricane, potentially a Category 4. And we're also tracking Imelda that could have impacts along the East Coast. It hasn't formed yet, but it most likely will, and will have impacts, specifically heavy rainfall over a large swath of North and South Carolina. There's also more flood potential in the southwest U.S., where we could see some isolated flash flooding. And we have the heat returning specifically to the Midwest, where we had a colder than normal start to September, but may have a warmer than normal start to October. I'll have updates on all these things over the next several days.